When I dared myself to face my fears of open seas, I didn't know that my life as I knew it was about to change forever. I didn't know that I'd fall in love with something that I had feared for so long. The Arctic, the North Pole, and polar bears, that was just something that was briefly mentioned in my high school lessons, and I wasn't really paying much attention to it. The only reference I had to that was Santa and Christmas movies, obviously. I had heard of yacht masters and captains, but still that didn't spark anything in me. I didn't know that people sailed around the world, let alone race around the world. But yet here I am planning my biggest adventure yet, to sail around the world solo. I am proof that human beings are limitless, that we can reinvent ourselves repeatedly in one lifetime. I truly believe that that is one of our superpowers. I'm one of those people that are yet to discover what their talent is, and I think my mom must have noticed that this bothered me somehow when I was growing up. So she told me, to leave no stone unturned in pursuit of what makes me happy, in pursuit of my dreams and my passions. I don't think that she meant that I could go jump off planes or sail, but yet here we are. So in December 2016, I asked myself the famous Cheryl question: what would you do if you weren't afraid? And being right there next to the Mediterranean, the obvious answer was to go offshore on a sailing boat. So I emailed a couple of schools, and everybody was said, nope, it's winter, we're not going to sea. And the one school in the north of France said yes, so I booked my ticket. I was off to Vannes in the north of France. When I arrived at the marina, I was scared. I had never set foot on a sailing yacht before, but I kept my cool, I didn't want to let that show. So we set off in the afternoon for a night sail, and when it was safe to do so, my instructor put me on the helm of the boat to steer the boat. And that was actually a brilliant idea because it kept me calm and, it distracted me, so I was able to focus on something else. And in my head, I was doing cartwheels, like I was screaming. I couldn't believe that I was actually steering a boat, I was really, really excited and very happy. But the next day I had a different kind of feeling where it was a quiet kind of happiness, there was a stillness within me and oneness with everything around me. And honestly, that's all it took. The sailing bug had bitten me. I was hooked, I remember going back to the hotel after the week of sailing, and I was crying. I was crying because there I was, having found something so amazing, and I had to leave to come back home. So in that moment, I promised myself that I would go offshore at least every 2 to 3 months, because I had a job and I had responsibilities. I kept that promise. So when I got back home, I immersed myself into this new world by connecting with people online, reading up on sailing, registering for courses as well, theory courses online. And I came across a sailing festival in the north of Spain, and I emailed the organizers, and the next thing I was on a flight to Spain. And that was a good decision on my end, because when I arrived in that room, to be around like-minded people was everything. The conversations, the flow, everything was just so perfect. And I knew in that moment that I would sail for as long as I was able to. And, there was no doubt in my mind that I was right where I belonged. For as long as I can remember, I've always been involved one way or the other in my community, be it sponsoring school fees for children or some form of sport development initiatives. And this was a very important part of me. So I wanted to carry the same thing onto sailing. So this was a new world, and I wanted to take everybody with me on that journey. So when the opportunity presented itself for an Arctic research expedition, it was obvious to me that this was the journey that I wanted to take. And going offshore also exposed me to plastic pollution and issues of climate change, which were things that were not necessarily relatable to a person on the streets, to a Lungi on the street. So I wanted to simplify the message so that people understood how their daily behaviors and activities affected the environment overall. So the expedition presented me with an opportunity to learn and grow with my community as we went along. We set off from Rostock in the north of Germany. And we were off to the Arctic. I remember us going completely off the grid when we left the European continent, and suddenly we had issues with our VHF radios. Everything was slightly delayed on our navigation systems, and unfortunately, as we approached Bear Island, just on the south of Svalbard, we encountered a huge storm that was forecasted to last for a while, and we had multiple system failures on the boat. So what was once a pan, which is just a few system failures, escalated to a mayday, where because of the storm and the system failures, we essentially had no control over the boat. So we had to call for search and rescue. So it was like a movie. So we had like this helicopter, and we had to jump into the Arctic and be fished out and hoisted into the helicopter one by one, And when we arrived in Svalbard, I didn't realize how dangerous the situation was until a doctor came up to us, wanted to check our temperatures. I'm like, no, we're fine. We're okay. But this guy was like, do you realize that you actually jumped into the Arctic Ocean? And I think that's when it hit me that we could have possibly died. While I at that point, I still didn't regret my decision. I was still focused on the mission that we had to go into the field and try and find ways to understand the environment around us. So we found some tour boats, so we would go off on daily excursions and taking sampling and stuff like that. It was a lesson on its own, in a sense that I felt like those were, that was a question from the universe, in that, do you still want to continue sailing knowing that you could die, And I still had no doubt in my mind that this is what I wanted to do. And now I was even more aware of the dangers that came with sailing, but I was equally twice as prepared of what would happen. So I knew exactly what would happen. I think that's what kept me pushing forward. Post the Arctic, I decided that I wanted to sail around the world solo. To me, that would be the ultimate challenge and the test for me to go against the elements and just to immerse myself into the wide ocean, the wide, endless ocean. So I have been working on that since. So I signed up for a yacht master course. So there's different licenses that you have to get in order to be unrestricted at sea. So I received my qualification at UK Sailing Academy, and a few weeks into that course, my mom had a stroke at home, and that actually shook me to the core. But then I equally realized that this is the reality of the life that I had chosen, that there would be emergencies and I wouldn't be able to be there, and I need to be okay with that, and I need to be able to sail to the nearest marina or continue the mission at hand. Living in the unknown has been such a beautiful journey for me. It's a phase of my life that I will treasure for eternity. It has introduced me to a side of myself that I never knew existed. I have pushed myself beyond the limits of my mind. It has forced me to live in the present. It has forced me to live my life to the fullest, and equally taught me that human beings are limitless, that we can do absolutely anything if we put our mind